Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, hang
Oh no, no picture for the daddy.
on. Well, it was fucking working, and then I had to use my phone
It was
to
fucking
do
and sucking and
to
fucking and
do
fucking sucking.
the Instagram bullshit, and then when I plug it back in, now it's not going.
You're right. It's all my fault because you have a janky system.
It's my system's fucking impeccable. How dare you?
Yeah,
Take it
yeah.
back.
Because I'm the one that's always having issues.
You're not. You're the one who doesn't do it. I'm fucking making magic over here.
Oh, sock hat daddy. That's why.
I'm out here making miracles happen on the back
Wait.
end,
Okay.
and
We're
you're
doing
just fucking cranking it, I guess.
here. If we're doing sock hats,
It's
I'm doing
so
sock hats.
cold.
I'm ready to.
Hang on. Now everything's coming in a weird size. What you got big plans?
Big plans for what?
Just like your life, I guess.
Eh,
Jesus. I'm glad it's not
I'm
that
wearing things too.
I'm glad it's not that dick Chet. You're such a fucking dork. There we are. Are you frozen or are you holding a pose like a lunatic?
Like it's like a
Hard to
lunatic.
tell. It's hard to tell with you sometimes, friend. You know?
Because I'm unhinged.
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm
That's part of
I'm a
it.
little under the weather as well.
Well, the weather is 4 degrees currently where I am.
Mm.
I'm getting a glare off the
Negative
Daddio sign.
15.
There it is. It's not a contest, and if it is, I'd win because 4 is higher.
Yeah. New Jersey is always sorry. It is technically 5. Feels like -5.
Oh, get out of here with your wind chill.
You win with you win with your. I mean, this is still nothing like we had a legit negative 15 degrees in Chicago. So with wind
Oh,
chill, it felt like
Chicago.
-30. And
Chicago's not
so
even a real
anytime,
place. Anybody who says they've been there, lying.
yeah, anytime there's anybody bitching about cold, I'm like, you haven't been with cold. I've seen cold.
I have to fly to Minnesota in a couple of days, so I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure there's going to be some cold.
I'm Horse Hotbody, and I'm here to give you some super sexy dating tips. Just the tip, though. The full thing would just be way too much.
Yucky.
I have realized that everybody except for Chet, and even Chet, all the characters have a bit of femininity,
Sure.
an effeminate side that I don't know
I
if.
swear to God, this is not an insult. This is not being like, well, because you're a girl. But they're all played by you, man. That's why. You know,
I'm not. I don't think I'm an overly
you
masculine
don't
fellow. Well, because
you don't
even
exude
nice
whatever
masculinity.
whatever Mark Zuckerberg's looking for now. That's not you. You know,
Whatever he's looking for.
we need more masculine energy. Shut up, Mark.
That's, I mean, even
Shut
nice man Stan, the the hit character from the thing that nobody watches. Um, but even he is being overly complimentary, which would be possibly seen as femininity. All right, are we? Can I check the live?
Yeah, I
'Cause
already did. But if
it's
you feel the need to double check,
okay.
you go right
I'm gonna
ahead.
I'm gonna poppy I'm gonna poppy it on because I heard we are gonna have some people in the the comments.
Oh God. I already checked, but the problem is now we have to say something else good before we got to do another
Yeah. Another
good
intro.
cold open. I already denied Chicago's existence.
Wait, is here the chat? So, hi everybody. Welcome to the chat.
Oh boy.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. The shit show. Announcing the Daddio Tour, baby. We already did that.
I know,
You
but
just didn't
I
change it.
had to call it something, you know? I figured that would be a
so there's
big topic this
yeah.
week.
So are there people in the chat?
You are.
I actually
Dirty girl.
I actually wanted to ask you some things about some stand-up comedy, some specifics of stand-up comedy, but
Uh-oh.
let me know when you wanna kick off that hot theme.
Hit it!
Bop. Daddio. Doo deep doo. Daddio. Beep beep poo poo poo. Daddio. Squirtly squirt squirt squirty. Daddio. Ploppity plop plop ploppy. Daddio. Skid mark oh smear smeary. Daddio. Doo 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 doogie. Daddio. 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 Daddio scat. Daddio scatio.
You did it. You did it, you dirty bird. You got
Yay!
you
I got you the laugh.
genuine. Well, because the first time they said pee pee poo poo, my thought was, oh, it sounds like they're saying pee pee poo poo, and then they said dookie a bunch of times.
Yeah. And then you found out that the Daddio Scatio was actually about scatting, the Urban Dictionary version.
Yeah, I've been on the internet. I've been on the internet since the mid '90s. I'm familiar with the term.
I did it. I succeeded. I don't even think we should have a show.
Yeah, we're done.
All I do is try.
It's just making
You
me
wanna
laugh
know-
at pee pee poo poo like a child.
That was my third iteration of the song. So I originally was doing I had written, and it turned out pretty well. A big band, which I mean, our original one is kind of old timey Frank Sinatra big band, lo-fi,
Sure.
like old timey radio. But I wanted to do an even one that was more bigger band and like call and response with the band with some scat. And it had lyrics. And I was like, this sounds good. I was like, but you know what now I've thought of? Is if I could use scatting to evolve into straight up just talking about scatting.
Yeah, if I could just trick Glenn's stupid idiot brain into laughing at pee and poop for 5 minutes.
And squirting and smearing. And, well, because originally it had more Daddio and it mentioned Ricky and Glenn. And I was like, oh, that's unnecessary. I was like, we just need to
Right,
say
we don't
Daddio
need
a
that
couple
fan
times.
art, you know?
Yeah, yeah. We don't need that. What we need is some boop 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 boop.
Boop doop boop.
Did I wear this ridiculous curly wig the whole time?
I mean, you can live your life. I'm wearing this hat the whole time. It's so cold. Very.
I'm sick, and I'm sorry.
Do you think it's from the wig?
Yeah, I think it's from the wig. I think it's from I think it's from the petri dish that I live.
Right. I remember last week we were talking about your children being sick.
Yes, and now Gus, my 1-year-old twin boys, Gus is on the mend, and now Paul is where Gus was. A few days ago, because they catch up with one another, and now because I have just been a human tissue for them, rubbing
Sure.
their noses and coughing in my mouth. I am now feeling it, and so I don't know if I want to try to get some Dayquil today and fight it. I don't have shows this weekend, but I am supposed to go to a fun hockey game with two of my friends. So I don't know. I don't know how to proceed. Just keep blowing my nose and
Man, I don't
liquids.
know.
But
Theraflu is my favorite beverage at this time of year. It's one of those things where it's like I forget which. There's a drug that's basically going to get pulled off the market any day now because there was like a bunch of studies that's like, oh, this one actually doesn't do anything.
that's battery acid.
Yeah, it's and it's in stuff like Dayquil. I mean, there's other stuff. There's like acetaminophen and things that do things, but there's one of the active ingredients. Like, oh, this actually doesn't really do anything. It's like when you buy, I think it's like the not behind the counter Sudafed.
Oh yeah.
Sudafed, great. But when it's like just the grab it off the shelf, you don't have to show anybody your ID, that one, I think that's what it is. You have disappeared and returned.
I'm sorry. I'm playing with my screen of I just want to see you.
Okay.
That's all I
Stop
want to
touching
see. I'm sorry. Stop.
You're going to go
touching
blind.
it. Oh, so what YouTube said we were going to be discussing. I got to take this wig off. I'm sorry. Get itchy. I'm done living a lie. That's great for audio. Is just to talk about.
The people love it.
Uh,
The people love hearing you. I mean, they can watch the clip of your ridiculous wig, or you do like a bunch of videos in it. They're I'm sure they're familiar.
no one's watching those.
But yeah,
At this point, I'm a
I
bad parent
changed
because
the
I've cut time away. Yeah.
I changed the graphic on the video. I titled the live about the tour because you and I are going on tour. There's dates locked in now from last week.
There are a couple of dates locked in, and I hope that by this time, in a couple of weeks, we have, I want to say, at least 10 dates. That would
Yeah.
be nice.
I would like to fill a poster before we do a big ol' announcey.
Before we announce those hot dates.
Only
So,
because if we're like, oh, big tour announcement, and we post the 4 dates that we have so far, and they're 6 months away from each other.
yeah. What do you do with it?
Yeah. Well, because I've seen criticism that I disagree with of like usually
I've seen criticism. I've seen it.
bitter comedians are like, oh, every time anybody does a road gig now, it's a tour. It's the same people who are like, oh, specials aren't special anymore. Shut up, idiot. Because, I mean, part of it, especially because we're doing this as a co-headlining thing, it is like, there's a consistent through line that you and I are co-headlining together. But the times...
It doesn't happen normally. You should embrace this and make it special. And go to every one of them and like make it like a Grateful Dead concert.
But I think slapping a layer of gloss on it and calling it a tour, I think makes it better for everyone involved, except for the bitter comic in your local scene who's like, why's Glenn going on a tour? He hosts an open mic.
I've gotten the exact actually opposite, and I know you talked about this a little bit, was I've gotten some flack from some extended family members for not putting anything together. I mean, it's people got to bitch about something, but like for not saying where I'm going to be until kind of like the day of or after the fact if I like make some posts.
Yeah. Well, I do that.
Like it'd be nice to,
it is
for
mainly,
us to know where you're going to be.
Yeah. I do it mainly as a function of most of the shows that I'm doing aren't for the public. So like I mentioned I'm going to Minnesota and everyone's like, oh, like you can't come unless you work at this one bank that is having me do their Christmas party. Like,
yeah. Okay. Well, no. Now challenge accepted. I will put in my application.
You got a couple days. Yeah. It's the end of the month. You can make this happen.
Uproot my family. I will promptly quit after the end of the show.
Yeah. Move to
and
Minnesota.
now I must ride back home with you to New Jersey,
Yeah,
where we live.
I have to. I'm traveling day of the show. I hate doing. Uh, I've been not looking forward to the flight of it all, but
Mhm.
it's like the first one out in the morning. Should have plenty of time, but it's like I get so stressed out about flying
Mhm.
that I just don't. I would rather get in the night before, just take it
Yeah,
easy in
of
the
course.
morning and then go. But the person who booked it either didn't know that that's what I like. I don't want to. I don't want to name names.
Come on, McCarthy.
Especially because most people don't know the name, but I know you know the name, and um, it is either this person or their assistant who booked it, who booked like the flight.
Yeah.
And if it's an assistant, I'm like, all right. But if it's the person I've been working with for years, like, come on, I don't want to
Do they also
fly
know
halfway
that you
across the country the
require
day of a show.
a mic stand? Do they also know that
Huh.
you need sound equipment?
I talked to the
Because
bank. The bank people are great. The lady that I talked to at the bank, tremendous. It is just the travel of it that I'm not looking forward to. The show, and I know like we've complained about corporate shows a lot already so far, and it is I'm I'd be lying if I was like, I'm really looking forward to it. It's gonna be really great. As far as corporate gigs go, the show part I think will be fine. Like they're on board. It's not a surprise. There's like a proper setup. It'll go good.
So, okay, that does kind of lead me into some of the things that had been jogging in my memory or thought space brain last week about comedy. I did a show this past weekend at an American Legion Lodge, and like you said, we've complained about corporate shows quite a bit.
Yeah, but
I
only because
think
they're horrible.
right, but we like making money
Yes.
in this craft. What I was going to say is I posted I had forgotten my the little tripod. I had forgotten this,
Yeah.
you know. The comedian's tool right now. Some clubs have some that are affixed to a railing or something, which I think is great.
Mm-hmm.
In case you forget yours, I had found this one at Off the Hook Comedy Club in
Yeah.
Naples, Florida, and I took it.
That's a
'Cause
crime.
it was hidden. It was like somebody had forgotten
Yeah,
and
there's probably
lost it.
some local comic who does their weekly open mic. He's like, I'm just gonna leave it here for next, and then you crush their dreams. They saw that it's gone now, and they're like, I might as well just give up.
Michael, the booker at the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, he was just like, if you can get me one exquisite tape from Off the Hook Comedy Club in Naples in 2 days, and they're just like, oh, I don't need to go get a tripod because I hid mine in a dusty area above the door.
Yeah.
I purposely put it there, so I'll record that tape and I'll get on the Tonight Show, and then they show up there day of
You're
show.
crushing
And it's
dreams
gone.
left and right.
They didn't have that. I didn't have that at this American Legion Lodge show.
I thought you were gonna
Slash
call it an
benefit.
American Liege, like you were shortening it to be
American Liege.
trendy. You know, the Am Liege.
And in Sellersburg, Indiana.
I feel like I've been
A
there.
very well put together show for one of these kind of shows, but I've heard a couple friends ask who've listened to Daddio. We rag on corporate shows, and it sounds like a lot of shows that we do aren't necessarily fun or the best circumstances.
Oh yeah, it only sounds that way because that's true. Most of the shows I
Right.
do are not fun or the best circumstances.
So I think there is this perception of if you do stand up, where's your Netflix special? Like, okay, oh, you do stand up. Oh, it must really like comedy clubs and awesome theaters and nothing weird or whatever.
Sure.
But we keep on doing these shows to get better and hopefully get to better circumstances for performing. That's why with this Daddio tour, that'll possibly be that. But I leaned my phone up against, there was a makeshift bar that had four wheels, so it was like a roving
Okay.
like podium bar. It wasn't just like it was very funny looking
Yeah,
in
you
person.
like wheel it
It
around
looked like
for
an
events. I know what you mean.
yeah, an octopus, but it was very cumbersome.
Okay.
Like that thing's never like being mobile. But anyway, they had a little makeshift bar, and I leaned my phone up against the cash register that was on top of it, and I recorded my set, and I decided to post it to talk about a not special, and I was like, I'm just gonna post this whole thing straight up. I don't know if anybody's gonna watch it. I don't necessarily think it's that good. The audience was very weird. Possibly I was weird. I was like, okay, I did 58 minutes or 56 minutes. I'm just gonna post this unedited, like not for clips, no zoom ins or whatever. You see the audience multiple times. People are coming to the bar, having conversations with the bartender during my set, and I was like, I just want to put this out there. No one's gonna watch it, mainly just for me. But if anybody is ever like, what does gig that a week later you'll forget because nothing great and nothing terrible happened.
Right.
What
It's
is
just
it
kind
like?
of,
And
it's
it's
just
like,
kind of like, look, this is not an ideal setup for comedy. It's not terrible, you're not getting chased off the stage. Crowd's not It's just like, yeah, this is like the thing I think people don't realize about the job of stand-up comedy is that it is a job, and sometimes it feels like work. Where I did a show over the weekend. I did a Don't Tell up in Ithaca, New York, and it was great.
you're going to tell us?
I'll tell everybody. I was going to tell people, but it sold out before I needed to like drop the word that I was going to be there. So it didn't matter. But
Congrats on the sellout.
again, it had nothing to do with me. They didn't know I was going to be there. They're not like, Glenn's coming back. It was a theater I'd done before. Just coincidentally, that's where it happened to be. But the show was great. It was really, really fun. And because those shows are set up really well by people who understand comedy. My friends, Madeline Murphy was one of the producers with Kenneth. He bills himself as like the only comedian in Ithaca, New York. So you can find him. But Kenneth, I met him at the Finger Lakes Comedy Festival. Madeline introduced us there. He had a great set at the festival. He had a great set at the Don't Tell. Super cool. Nice guy. He had somebody filming like the whole thing. So I set my phone up in the back. Or no, I brought my nice camera because it was like, ooh, we're doing a Don't Tell. We're gonna do the night. We're gonna get the nicey nice. And then Madeline had her camera, and then Kenneth, he's like, I got a guy coming with, I think he had two. So several cameras were pointed at everything for the whole show. I've not watched my camera or gotten the clips from that, but it's like, yeah, I would like to see that because that was, a really fun show. Had a couple camera
It's
angles. Cool. Don't Tell is cool. So like, if I get some nice looking clips from that, I'd be like, cannot wait to share those. I was doing a fair amount of newer stuff, where it's like I don't think I can bring this the way I'm framing it. When I've been doing shows so far this year, I don't think will work at corporate because I don't think they'll understand. Because corporate audiences are like essentially they're at work, right? They're not there to see comedy. It is a lot of times a surprise to them. They didn't know it was happening. They might genuinely not understand what stand-up comedy is. It feels so dumb to say, but like people don't know what it is. If they're like, well, I understand that things can be funny, but what do you mean you just stand there and talk about you? Like that's not a job. I'm like, well, it is.
Yeah, when it's not an art form. I mean, it's wild to say that because with say like Saturday Night Live or other things or old talk shows,
right.
I think it's even less of a familiar thing now because like with daytime talk shows and different things, you would have like Steve Martin or these different comedians who would come on and do sets. I don't think that's a thing anymore with these shows like The Talk or The View or Drew Barrymore's show or whatever. So I think even now it's even more of a foreign thing. And if some people, if they're unaware that it's happening at a work function, like for what we said, it's also hard for them to laugh because they're like, well, I don't want to be judged on what I'm laughing at. And the
Right.
lights are usually up. And I'm not, I'm on a guarded, they're very guarded.
Absolutely.
But even beyond that, I have seen exactly what you're talking about, where an audience, after like the 15-minute mark, they're like, oh, they're done like looking around, like, this is what this is. This person's talking at us.
There's not
like,
more.
oh,
It's not.
yeah, there's not more.
He's not going to start doing
not a
card
show.
tricks.
Well, he's not going to sell us something. This isn't like a motive. Like, they're not sure what
Right.
the goal is of the thing. So there's these multi-layers of guards. That's, again, it's why those shows, whether it be corporate or, like the show I did, I think clipping out like Don't Tell makes sense. Makes you look like you're part of a cool thing, and it's going to look the best. It's one of the best ways to get a short clip out of a thing that's not like Comedy Central Premium Blend or something back in the day. It's kind of like the new version of that. But I think it has just as much merit to show us working on something. Because I also did a lot of new material. It's not the best way, but like more often or not, those are, at least for us, those are the regular ways. Those are the more normal.
Yeah, I do more
ways
of those
that
shows
we're
than
working.
any other kind of show. So that's just when I have to do new bits. Like
Yeah.
I have the benefit of corporate audiences not really knowing anything about comedy is very rarely am I on a show for like a company holiday party and there's anybody in that crowd who has any idea who I am. And I mean, it's rare at any venue where people are familiar with my work, but I mean, increasingly, like there will be a couple people, like, I did shows in Colorado and people were like, oh yeah, no, we've seen your dry bar. That's why we came, because we like you. And it's like, okay, I've never been here before. It's weird to me that that's how it is. But a couple times, like I'll be doing a corporate gig and one or two people will be like, oh, I think I've seen this guy's clip online. Like I heard that joke about the neurophysiologist recruiter or whatever. But when I do the corporate, it's like, well, I can.
Is that what they say? They're like, I remember that neurophysical.
That's usually the one that people have seen.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it would have been like your name stuff and like the substitute.
Well, that's the dry bar will post a clip on comedians' birthdays, and the one that they did for me last year was that clip, and it, not to brag, did some numbers. So
did some business.
People have seen it. But usually I can just go up and do the dry bar set and no one's like, oh, I've heard all this material before. They probably, they've never.
I forget. So this is, I forget. And I definitely, no one is coming to see me. No one is quoting this stuff. No one is blah, blah, blah. If they're like, oh, I saw you did this and that's why I thought it was okay to get a ticket. But I often forget that I could not always work and make it a job. Like I could just do like my first album or my dry bar and it would be fine. No one's there. It's going to be like, no.
Right. I wouldn't do, I'm not going to book a show at Steel Stacks and then just play the hits, because if anybody's coming to see me on purpose, that's where they're going to do it. So it's like, those are the people who are like, we would love to hear new bits from you, not just that your name is dumb. But if I'm going to a town for the first time and people have never heard of me, then yeah, all right, here's some jokes about how I have a silly name that I've done 40,000 times, but you haven't heard of them. You don't know that. So when I'm doing corporate stuff, it's like, all right, I've got bit my tongue. I'm like, I've got the dry bar set. That is 25-ish minutes of very clean jokes I know I can get away with in a corporate setting, and no one's going to be mad. So you're usually doing... I've been talking people down from an hour a lot lately.
I've been talking people down.
People are like, we want you to do an hour, and I won't refuse. I'll do it, but I was like, what you really want? Really? Perfect world? What you want is 30 minutes. But then they're like, well, no, because we're paying a lot of money. I was like, okay, well, how about...
That's why the feature set is the sweet spot set. Like, over time, anybody who's done a 3-person MC feature headliner gig covets a feature spot so well. Like, it's so much because
the pressure's
30
off.
minutes.
You're not
pressure's off.
You're not just
the
cramming
first.
something into 10 minutes, you know? It is pretty choice.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, they're
Room
like,
to
oh,
breathe.
well, when I watch a special on Netflix, it's an hour, so you do an hour. And it's like, right, but you watch that special on Netflix, it's a theater full of people who want to watch Bill Burr. It is not a bunch of accountants having dinner. I mean, even like, look, I'll bring an opener. I'll have an opener to do 10 minutes. I'll do 40, right? Then boom, we're at 50 minutes. Hey, great. Almost an hour. We'll all get out of here. But hearing one person talk for an hour is a lot. Hearing us talk for 2 hours every week must be unbearable for whatever sick freaks actually listen to this show. But to just
sick
to
freaks.
just have it.
You love that scatting song that opened up this show. You're like, oh yeah.
Well, but the newer stuff I've been doing it's really not that much new material. It is just like how I'm approaching doing stuff. I've talked about it a little bit on the show where I had the realization last year. Basically, I was like, what do I need to do to get better at being a comedian, right? Like, how do I get better at this thing that I love doing? How do I get, better at booking gigs? All of it. Like, the ways to improve all struck me as, well, to get better as a comedian, I need to get better as a person. And that seemed a lot harder than it's like, oh yeah, I just got to be, I got to do more open mics or what. No, it's like, no, you have to you really got to look inward, my guy. You got to figure some stuff out. Where it is like, oh yeah, make eye contact with people, you absolute robot. Like, you ask people questions about their lives. Because I was driving up, I did that, the brewery show I mentioned last week. I was driving up there. My buddy Vito, who put the show together, it was me, Vito, and Aaliyah Brown, who I've mentioned before, all driving up together. Vito is a young guy just out of college, very interested in doing comedy and kind of like the production side of it. He's starting to set up shows. I've worked with him before. Really nice kid. He asked me 40,000 questions on that car ride, and we get like halfway up, and I mentioned the thing. I was like, oh yeah, I need to like get better at being a person. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I was like, well, for example, you've asked me so many questions about my career and my life, and I haven't asked you a single thing. And he's like, I think he thought I meant he was asking too many questions. I was like, oh, no. I love talking about myself, man. Absolutely. Ask me questions all day. But I don't, unless I purposefully have the thought, you have to ask this person questions about themselves too, I won't do it. And it's not like, I mean, I've been a podcast guest a lot. I've gotten interviewed before, but not so much that I can be like, well, normally when I talk to people, they're talking to me because I'm famous comedian Glenn. I don't ask like people in my day-to-day life. They will be like, oh, hey, how you been? And I'll like tell them what's going on with the kids or whatever. And then that's the end of the conversation. I won't be like, oh, but also because you have a rich inner life that I'm sure you would love to talk about. What is going on for you? So I've been working on like a checklist or like an outline. I've brought it up on stage a couple of times instead of a set list because it's like I have enough material to fill an hour show. That's not an issue. I don't need to write down jokes that I can remember. What jokes I do don't really matter because, like I said, usually people aren't familiar with my work. So it doesn't matter if I'm doing an older joke or a newer one. But it is literally like, it looks like the most up my own ass self-improvement bullshit. But I explain it to the audience in a way that they're like, this kid's pretty up his ass. But it's
so Kanye West at one of the big cool outdoor festivals, Bonnaroo or something.
Sure.
This is years ago. It was years ago. Somebody saw his set list, and it had like all of the lights. Like it had his songs listed, but every few songs there would be a parenthetical that would be motivational.
Yeah.
Where it was him from earlier reminding himself of things to do currently and presently while the concert was going on. It's just like, hey, you're doing great. And like a couple more songs that was like, just remember, even if you think the audience, aren't giving you what you need, you are doing a good job. Like, it was like, it got fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Of like,
I hate how relatable I find that.
I that's why I'm saying it, and like I'm saying crazy, and I'm not saying like, oh, what? I'm just saying it seems to anybody else that could be, like you said, up your own ass.
Yeah. Well, one of them is literally, I just write "believe in yourself," which is a thing I jokingly tell people all the time because to me it's hilarious as just this like catch-all dumb advice motivational thing. But also when I did my first album, I had a set list like taped to the floor, but I also printed out in big letters on it was the set list in like big enough letters that I could read them on the floor, and then just in giant letters on one sheet of paper said "believe in yourself." And then last minute decided don't use the set list, I will just leave "believe in yourself" and I'll take the set list down. I've run this show a lot. I know the material. I will just actually believe in myself that I can do it. And then I had started like, I will write that and put it at the foot of the stage sometimes. And I left it once at Wisecrackers at the Mohegan Sun in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and they kept it. And I didn't know until another comic posted. They're like, oh, it's nice that Wisecrackers has this sign that says "believe in yourself." And I was like, that's mine. I put that there. I didn't realize I left it.
And you're like, that's not for you.
No,
that's not
you
for
don't.
You, to
you got to believe
yourself.
in me.
That's for me.
I got to change it now to say
believe in Glenn
Tickle.
Tickle.
Yeah.
Yeah, believe in. Unless you're, and then parentheticals, unless you are Glenn Tickle, and then believe in yourself.
But it is stuff. It says like, acknowledge the audience's people, make eye contact, give someone a compliment is one of them. Ask someone a question. Talk about something that happened today, because one of the big flaws I see in me as a performer is I will get up and I will just monologue at people. There can be, this is partially a strength, admittedly, because like if you're, let's say, I don't know, at a black box theater in Florida and there's 7 people in the room, if you're just plowing through and acting like it's a full room, everyone's having a good time, the show is better, right? Like that's a good skill to have.
Oh, no,
but
no. You did exactly. I was, it was awful, but I did more like there was more people in there and ate the dong. You connected to you did these things that you're saying that.
I mean, it was easy because I was literally related to half the people in the room, right? Like
I know, but you still, for whatever the reasons were of comfortability, that it didn't shake you like it did me. Like after that show, I was just like, oh my God, like I did awful. Like I could have also done the job while also doing it.
I didn't like, I acknowledged a couple of times that there were only a couple people, but acted as if it was a full show and everyone was there to have a good time. Like that's, And that came from doing so many virtual shows because you're not getting the same level of feedback when you're looking at 40 people on a screen and half of them are muted, some of their cameras are off. You can tell some people are just still working and not paying attention. Like, you're not getting the level of immediate feedback we're used to in comedy. So it's like, well, I could attack all these people for not paying enough attention to me.
Yes.
Or
And I
just
didn't
act
do
like they
that.
are.
I was
and then
just
right. You
was
didn't
just
like turn on
scattered.
the audience. It's just
No.
you were.
I was just scattered, and it was
yeah.
bad, and the material was, it felt like I was constantly hitting potholes on stage with how I like potholes, and that I was constantly restarting, of just being like, oh, is this what you guys want? Like, let's
Yeah.
talk about this, and then going to the next thing, and it, like I said, it was very scattered. Where I legitimately sat down and enjoyed watching you perform.
Well, I'm great at
Because
what
where
I
you're
do.
saying that's a thing. Yeah, but it was that level of connectivity that I had not seen you do before.
Right.
So what I think is interesting is you almost do it more with less people when it is more intimate. Maybe that's easier for you to do.
Well, I think it was more. I saw it as more necessary.
Okay.
Because of how few people there were. It's like, well, look, if I just play the hits, basically, like, this isn't gonna work. The guy, I forget his name, the kid working the
Door
desk,
guy.
he did a great job. He's like, normally when it's this few people, like, everybody just kind of treats it like a long open mic.
Which is great when he's like, when it is always only 7 people in this room.
Right.
On a
It genuinely made me feel better. He's like, look, this is what happens. It's a Sunday night or whenever. It's Monday night, whatever dumb night we did a show there. He's
Ron,
like, yeah.
Ron Feingold is coming in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And Harlan Williams or whatever.
But
so with you, I almost feel like the way how you're talking about, so you can either be classified as that being a spectrumy autistic thing,
Yeah.
or misanthropic, which for me, if I don't ask a question, the way I rationalize it is that I'm being genuine, because if you want to ask a bunch of questions, that's fine. I'm willing to oblige unless I shut down. If I don't ask you questions, it's because I honestly don't care. And I know that sounds shitty.
Right, but that's...
But I think for you, you are more, have this autism that I don't think your next hour should necessarily be Hannah Gadsby. The way that you're presenting to me right now, what you're being mindful of Glenn, the performer.
Yeah.
I almost think that's what your next hour should be, as Glenn as the performer's working on this, but he's talking about Glenn.
I kind
as
of
the
agree
human.
because
Yeah.
It's only been shows I've done this month where I've literally brought this dumb list up on stage with me, and I end up the thought being like, look, I won't bring up a set list. I will bring up this list of things to remind myself to do, because I think that will make me, it'll be more present. I'll be more in the moment. Not that I'm looking to improv bits all the time, but the thing about I'm like, talk about something that happened today is it's a way to force myself to write more jokes instead of just relying on,
I'm telling
you,
I think I can hear me on other things or any place that has been an outlet for me to share my opinion. I don't always love gimmicks, but I love a gimmick that is narratively supported. And so I think if you were transparent and you were able to make your hour 45 minutes blur the lines of you this is how you're presenting the show to the audience, of like, I have no, like, it's a hard line because, like we said, some people don't understand stand up and the rigmarole, the ins and outs of all of it. But if you can present that with saying, this is what I'm working on as being a person, the person that's in front of you that's talking about
Well, I mean, I had kind of the same thought driving home from Ithaca, where it's been almost 2 years since I recorded Crime League. And I was like, well, I have material, right? Like I have jokes that I've written in that time. It's probably 45 minutes to an hour if I wrote it all down, but it didn't have like a through line. And so the first hour was literally, all right, colleges have asked me to send them a recording of me doing comedy for an hour. I've been doing comedy for then 7 years. Sure, here's all the jokes. And you record that and you're like, great, it's out there now. Second one was unfortunately the one about my brother dying, where it's like, okay, this is more of like a kind of a one-man showy thing of I'm writing jokes about one specific event and its aftermath. So I had a very clear, this is what this show is. When I did Dry Bar, it wasn't thematic as much as it's just like, look, it's got to be so clean, right? It has to be very clean. I called it The Favorite because I have a joke about, do you have a favorite kid? And a lot of it was about my kids, so that's sort of a loose theme. When I did Crime League, sort of the same, like visually and in title, it is inspired by my love of Buckaroo Banzai, but the jokes, it's not stand-up comedy about this movie. I mention it, and there's some visual hints, like red glasses. I have these because
Red microphone.
The red microphone this is the one that I use in the special. I painted it red because when they do the concert in the movie, Buckaroo's got a red microphone. But again, that was more because of the pandemic. I had not had the chance to record anything in a while, and I genuinely saw it as like, what have I been up to since the last one? The last thing I recorded was January 2020, and then the world got real cool and normal for a long time. So when you get into April 2023, I think was when I recorded, as like,
yeah,
what have you been doing for 3 years? So it is like, it's the jokes about, doing comedy in a shed. And one of the first negative comments I got, it wasn't even that negative. I actually ended up having a nice discussion with the guy. I put it up on the stand-up subreddit, which, if anybody's curious, that is a great place for professional comedians to find out what open micers think about their work. And I posted it.
Wait, a place on the internet where people are sharing their hot takes and opinions of people that are way more famous doing a thing.
And I put it there, and one of the first comments I got was the kid's like, a kid. He could have been 100. I have no idea. Again, I'm not even sure it's a man. It was a man.
It was a guy. Yeah, if it's criticism, it's a dude.
He's like, can I ask when this was recorded? Because it's kind of weird that you're still doing like jokes about the pandemic. And I was like, it was recorded in April 2023. And no, it's not, because the pandemic is still happening. People are still getting COVID, and it still has huge repercussions for society as a whole. But also, the last thing I recorded was January 2020, before the pandemic, right? So for me to go, all right, here's comedy January 2020, here's comedy April 2023. I'm not going to acknowledge the biggest thing that happened in the world in that time would be irresponsible, I think.
Also, it was bonkers.
It was bonkers, but also that joke about doing comedy in a shed for 85 people in India who are muted and their camera is off. That joke kicks ass. It's a good joke.
And it's like saying like, okay, what you're saying by the passive aggressive, can I ask when this was recorded?
Yeah.
And to be like, we should stop talking about the pandemic is because you're a whiny little bitch.
Sure.
That is tired of hearing about this thing. That's the statement you're making by asking that passive aggressive bitchy little comment.
Yeah. Well, because
I don't know why I care about like internet commenters. I don't care about everybody sharing their 2 cents and starting arguments online as much as I care about say what you mean. Don't form it in like the form of like a snarky, passive aggressive comment. That's what. So if somebody wants to talk about an observation about World War II or the Civil War, not just wars, but things that happened many a moon ago, and you're just like, oh, aren't we so far removed?
I mean, and honestly, that's like the most recent thing that happened that I talk about in that special. I talk about the Great Emu War of 1932. You know, like. Aren't we over talking about the time Australia lost a war to birds? No, because I found out that most people don't know that it happened, and I feel it's my social responsibility to educate them. But yeah, it's like I have jokes about Jurassic Park, a movie that came out in 1993. Like,
it's Glenn Tickle comedy.
Yeah,
you are very mentioning about these other things that have happened and these touchstones that you bring up in your act, and I wonder, do you bring them up chronologically or do you bounce?
Oh, I bounce, baby. Yeah. Oh.
Okay. Well, so what I was gonna say is the way you just presented that there is this gap and what is out there that Glenn Tickle has talked about and has developed a comedic take on. 2020 was the last time, and then 2023, and you're just like, I have to fill that gap. Must tell you,
right?
My
it is. I mean, it's that
approach was.
It's my narcissistic.
It is very timeline. Yeah, it is.
Well, the people want to know what I've been doing. Which...
No, I think that's fascinating. And if I were to get into a comedian, and if you like, we've talked about before, the evolution of Birbiglia and how. Like you were saying, like releasing to colleges, they want an hour.
Yeah.
Like Birbiglia, when he was like a guitar playing, a little bit of Stephen Lynch, a little bit of Mitch Hedberg, college-y kind of guy. What I like, regardless if you like his comedy or not, I like the evolution of his career. If I got into Glenn Tickle and was just like, oh, I love seeing how his brain works of talking, like filling in these gaps of being like, look, since the last time you saw me,
yeah,
let's catch up. Like, let's talk about
the I think
in Glenn Tickle's life.
I genuinely, isn't that the point? Like, as a guy whose comedy is largely autobiographical, or, not that jokes about Jurassic Park are autobiographical, but the movie's important.
But they are.
So the fact that I I will continue to do. There's a joke that mentions Jurassic Park in the new hour because it's.
Do you think your synapse, like the way you're wired, the way your brain works?
Sure.
That you have the comedic brain to observe something and put your spin on why it's funny, but with your confidence of you as a performer is you do that with your own bubble. You don't look at, we talked about this with not wanting to necessarily write politics or whatever.
Right.
The confidence that you have and the approach to how you look at things comedically, you look at your life and you're like, that's what I'm going to choose, be confident about, to make art about, and a show about, not anything else, like not like workplace environment, not race, not sex, not you know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, I think I forget who I was talking to. It might have been Kenneth in Ithaca.
We're getting into the psychology of Glenneth.
Yeah, we're going deep on the Daddio show today.
Yeah.
I think it might have been I was talking to Kenneth or someone else at the Ithaca show where I basically I compared myself to Abed from Community. Where it's like, well, I use movies and TV shows that I like to make things relatable in a way that I can understand them. So like when somebody says something, I'm like, oh, well, that's like in this episode of the A-Team.
Yes.
Because that's how I look at stuff. It is like, how How does what I'm seeing relate to something I'm familiar with? Thumbs up.
We are children of the box. Like
I
we
love a
are the
box.
children of the baby boomers. So it will be interesting now that there are screens everywhere, and not to old man daddy-o talk, to what our children are going to be like. Because I agree, we have that shorthand where a friend and I were talking about. I think it was Eric Hunter again, um, where we've gone on long walks and just basically podcast on a walk. As friends do when you don't record it for prosperity. Um, we're discussing that we've said, because now we're close to 40, we've said the Tommy Boy catchphrases, we've said the Wayne's World catchphrases, like who's Anthony, who's Anthony. We don't even do the inflection as an impression anymore, like we did
Right.
when we were kids or even older. We just say it monotone, and we all kind of just like nod in agreement, almost as if we're at like church. It's like a call and response, and we're like, yes. Yes,
Well,
that was the appropriate time to say that Wayne's World thing, because we just know now.
yeah, there's a lot of that I have with various friends. I was playing over Christmas. My friend Dan, who lives in North Carolina, was up. His mom and my mommy are best friends. So I've known this kid since he moved to town when he was like 7 or whatever. And we were at his mom's house, and we were playing some, I don't remember the name of it. It's some music-based trivia game. And I get so weirdly competitive with trivia stuff, even though I'm like, I don't know a lot about music. I don't think I'm going to do very good. But the way the game is structured, it's not necessarily the person who knows the most trivia about music will win. There's like gameplay elements. It's like, okay, I got a chance. I can figure this out. I'm good at games, even if I don't know a lot about music. But the Maneater by Daryl Hall and John Oates came up.
Yeah.
And no, see, that was a point of contention because you had to say the year and the artist and the title. And he said Maneater by Hall and Oates. And you could correct if they're wrong, and you'd be like, it's not. If they say it's like, oh, it's Maneater by, the Monkees or whatever, you can be like, no, he said Hall and Oates, and I said, look, not to be a dick, but I guarantee you, before you flip that card over, it's going to say Daryl Hall and John Oates. And
interesting.
He's like, it's the same thing. I was like, it's not the same thing. It's a thing they bring up in interviews a lot. They get annoyed. They have never billed themselves as Hall and Oates. He's like, that's the name of the band. It's not the name of the band. It is just Daryl Hall and John Oates. But also, Harvey Danger, my favorite band, does a cover of Maneater. And there's like weird interstitials. So I don't think it was even his. I think it was his wife's turn when the song was playing. And she knew it, but I don't know, she like remembered it was Hall and Oates. Or, it's pretty easy to guess the name of the song is Maneater. But even, like, you play part of the song, you have to like guess it. So during the instrumental part, like Dan and I start just reciting the like interstitial bits from the Harvey Danger cover, where it's just Sean Nelson like talking as if he's in the recording studio. So we just start doing that and it's same thing. It's like the funniest thing in the world to us is like, oh yes. Yeah, remember this version of a song from the 80s that came out when we were in college that now we will just randomly text each other, pardon me, are you Oates? And it is the funniest thing in the world. And like
it's that shorthand. It's that thing of why comics, for the most part, unless they're just a douchebag or they're completely the ideology of where they're coming from and their brand of comedy. Basically, like, you can think a comedian's not funny, but you can still think they're a fine comedian. There are some comedians that aren't funny, and you're just like, I don't want to be anywhere near you. I think you're a disgusting human being. That's why your comedy sucks. But when comedians get together, they can hang out and they can bullshit about a lot of stuff because there's a shorthand of that like shared experience. Like, yeah, like we get it.
Well, that's
Vito,
Andy Erickson, a great comedian. Yeah. I was doing a NACA event in I think it was Buffalo, New York, years ago, and ended up. It was me, my friend. I think my friend Jason was there. Maybe it wasn't Buffalo. I don't remember where this was, or I think my friend Jason was also there. Jason Brown, another comedian, and Andy Erickson is on the bill, and I'd seen her on the Last Comic Standing tour when I went to see. I was there specific. She was on the year. I think we talked about it before. She was on the year with Michael Palisak, who I'd done a festival with and really like. So I went, and then I think saw her. I don't think we met at the tour or at the Just for Laughs tour. Not Just for Laughs. Last Comic Standing tour. But then in Buffalo, it's at NACA. It's a lot of magicians and bands and stuff. And there are comics, but I think less than bands and magicians and stuff. So it was just like we were just at the same hall. It's like, oh, hey, I'm a comedian. You're a comedian. Do you want to go get lunch and talk about comedy? And it's like, yeah, it does not matter that we've never met. It does not matter that we don't actually know that many of the same people. But it's just like, yeah, I would rather have lunch with another comedian, even if it is somebody I don't really know that well, or at all. A lot. Like when we did the open mic in Florida, it's like, yeah, I'm more than happy to hang out in a dive bar with a bunch of comedians. I mean, the part where we had to do comedy in it was probably my least favorite part. But like, just hanging out with other comics, great. Like, I might not want to hang out with any of those guys again. Again, if any of them are listening, I'm not talking about anyone specifically, except for the one guy who pretty specifically I never want to see again. But a lot of them, it's like, we're not gonna be buds, I mean, we might be. Again, we didn't get deep with anybody, but I just mean, like, look, for the hour or whatever after a show where you're kind of hanging out, it's easier to do it with comics. I'm so awkward around strangers. So having just the one thing in common of like, oh, good, you're a comedian. We can connect on at least one level. I went and did that the Pizza Place show.
Yeah.
I didn't know any of the comics. I had texted back and forth with the guy who runs it pretty briefly about picking a date, right? And I get there, and I'm just eating pizza, my favorite food in the world. I'm having a great time. I see the other comics show up, and it's like, great. I can talk to these people. But if I have to go to, like, my wife's work party, then it's like, oh, I don't know. I don't know how to interact with other humans.
Yeah. Or you're going to try to, like, I know I occasionally will either wait for a moment that I think, like, oh, I can make a pretty comfortable joke right now.
Yeah.
And I'll do that, and maybe that will keep me from being viewed as, like, oh, well, they were quiet. Are they a dick? Like, blah,
do you
blah,
get
blah. If
you don't seem like a comedian from people? Like let's say you go to
I think that's
your
the
wife's high
difference
school
between
reunion, right?
No, I think that's the difference between you and I is, like, if have found the opening to make some jokes, I'll do it for my own, like, and if it, like, for my own amusement. And then if it happens a few times, and then if somebody says something like, oh, blah, 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 Ricky performed, and then someone would be like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, it makes sense. You're a performer. And it's not because I'm, like, my ADHD or, like, I feel like I'm not getting attention or something. I don't think that's ever been a claim against me that anyone's just like, ugh, just such a attention whore.
Oh, because there's people who are, like, always on, and they're annoying, and I don't want to be around them. So if you were like that, this show and tour would not be happening.
No,
but
there's plenty of people who are always on. Kim Sherwood, guy I tour with, he's on a lot, but not to what you're saying of just like, oh, I can't be near you. Like, there can be quiet times and stuff, but like him and I always go to like a Denny's or a Steak and Shake or something after a show. We went to Waffle House this last time, and he is very jovial with the wait staff. Like, not overly so, but he's definitely more. He likes
See, I have a
being
friend like that,
friendly.
and it always makes me really uncomfortable. And not, I don't mean like in the way I complain
Yeah.
about Seinfeld being shitty to wait staff. Because he's not like, he's not belittling them. He's not like making fun
Yeah.
of them, but it's like, just tell the young woman what you want to eat and let her go about her day. You know?
There's cameras on them. So like it's a show, so I don't take that as being like, you know, Seinfeld is his thing is like the superiority. So I did a screenshot when Glenn was sad where we killed David Lynch last
Jesus.
week
Oh, yeah.
before he died.
Go, finish your story, and then I'm going to yell at you.
A mere day before Lynch dies, we talk about how I've found a new appreciation for some movies I didn't like over the years that I've gone back to, but Lynch is one that I look. This
Come
isn't
to
me
Bethlehem,
backpedaling 'cause now he's
Pennsylvania on
dead.
Sunday and watch Eraserhead with me at Steel Stacks.
I would love to do that.
Drive the
I
9
will go
hours
see
or
anything.
whatever.
But I'm saying going to a theater and seeing some classic movies, regardless if how I feel about a director.
Yeah,
most of
it's
their
it's one
oeuvre.
one of the great joys in life, truly.
Kubrick is another. I'll align him. He can't die. He's already dead.
Yeah, he's
So
been
I
dead for
will
quite
also
some
say
time.
Kubrick is a filmmaker that I like a couple of things, but all in all, the filmography I'm not a huge fan of. We were talking about that with Lynch last week, and then he died. I'm a fan of the vibe and everything he did. I'm just not necessarily a specific fan of each one of the things. But so when when Glenn was very sad last week, I was watching the Comedians in Cars, and it was Bill Maher,
The worst.
Seinfeld, at a coffee shop, rating a waiter for trying to shake their hands when he introduced himself at the table. And so I screenshotted it, and I knew before sending it to you, I was like, if there's one person that Glenn probably hates more than Seinfeld, it's Bill Maher.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot
And-
of people I hate more than Seinfeld, but I absolutely hate Bill Maher more than I hate Jerry Seinfeld.
Oh, I love that. I loved knowing that you were just like, oh,
Just immediately be like, this is, you know what? I'm going to send my clinically depressed friend an image that's going to anger him. We're going to shake him out of the
But
blues, baby.
it amused me. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the thing I'm going to yell at you for. So we talked about it last week. Ricky and I are going on tour. It's going to be a co-headlining stand-up comedy tour. We are not doing the podcast live. They're both called Daddio. You guys are a smart bunch. You can tell the difference. But part of that was we're putting together like this website to send to venues and stuff. And I was cutting together a reel, we were pitching the tour, kind of playing a highlight clip. I was editing that, sent it to Ricky. I was like, here's what I got. And you notice one of the clips, the audio is a little out of sync. And I was like, I'll jump back in and fix it. And then you're like, David Lynch died. Like, while I'm doing that. And it's like, well, it's done now. I'm going to go. What are you talking about? I'm not going to keep editing this comedy reel. I'm going to go lay under my bed and be real sad for a while. And it is like when Pee-wee died. I found out Paul Rubens died while I was signing on to a Zoom call to be a guest on our friend JD Creviston's Clean Comedy podcast. And I'm like the whole time trying not to cry on camera with my other adult man friend, but also I was like, I know he's a Pee-wee fan too. Do I tell him? Do I think he knows?
Yeah.
And
Use the therapy.
I waited until the episode was over, and I was like, hey, I'm sorry if I was weird. I found out literally signing on to this call that Paul Rubens died. And he's like, he didn't know. And he's like, that would have been the whole episode. Would have just been you and me talking about Pee-wee. And I was like, yeah. And it's not that I didn't want it to be that because I was like, I got to plug my special. It was just like, it would have been ugly. It wouldn't have been like, oh, it's just two guys fondly remembering this artist that they both
Celebrating.
really loved. It would have been JD looking back fondly on Pee Wee's career, and me just ugly crying in the corner. Because
It would have been a eulogy. It would have been a eulogy instead of a celebration.
I genuinely don't know that I would have been able to talk about it so quickly.
Right. That's what I'm saying is like he would have been giving the eulogy. You'd have been in the audience crying at the funeral instead of like some time removed and being like,
Yeah.
let's fun.
Well, 'cause I did-
celebrate.
It happened like while I was basically doing a press tour for World Crime League. So I was doing a lot of podcasts that week. And maybe a day or two later, like it kept coming up because comics like Pee Wee Herman. So it's like, yeah, I could talk about it then, but like finding out and then having to, it is like watching news anchors get like some terrible breaking news in their ear and then have to be like, oh man, this just went down, when they're like trying to keep it together, is I guess an admirable skill that I don't think I have.
No, I also did a podcast the night or whatever when Paul Rubens passed. I don't know what it was for or whose podcast it was, but I remember sidelining part of it to be like, it must have been like for maybe, maybe, I was going to say All Your Friends Are Dead. I don't remember what it was for, but anyway, I was like, oh, if we want to talk about inspiration, I was like, found out Paul Rubens passed away, like, and just, for like good 20 minutes, I was just like, and this is why he should not be forgotten, and this is why he should be awarded all of the admiration
and I mean,
he rightfully deserves.
I was honestly a little surprised how hard Lynch hit me, because I mean, I really like some of the movies. I like Twin Peaks, but again, like, he has a book, Catching the Big Fish, which is like, it is essentially like an autobiography / thing about transcendental meditation, but it is about like the idea of creativity, that I've gotten a lot out of over the years. And like you said, you're like, yeah, I like the vibe. Like I'm more into how he approached creativity and making art than necessarily any of the art itself. But there's a short list of celebrities where it's like, they're a lot older than me, so I'm probably gonna outlive them. And there's like,
Hopefully.
there's a couple
Should.
where it's like, I'm not getting anything done that day, you know? Like,
Well,
I don't know that I would
obviously-
have put David Lynch on that list before he died.
It was a surprising one to you, but like for me, you were editing. I think that would have given me the want. You're doing something that he did. Like, I think I would have been like,
Yeah. Oh, if I was
well,
doing
part-
dishes or whatever, I probably would have finished the dishes. But
no, like editing, I'd have been like, oh, okay, yeah, fuck yeah, okay, he was a editor, you're a filmmaker, just a vibe spinner, just a mood. I think I would have. That's a big reason of why I released the performance from this past Saturday as a quote unquote special on my YouTube page. It's why I did it that way. It's because when I scrubbed through it, I'm like, well, I'm not pulling any of this for clips. This is too weird, and it's not actually that successful. I don't want to share any of this. But then as I was scrubbing through and I saw the weird little interstitials of people coming to the bar and like talking to the bartender or like having conversations, I was like, this is, to me, I was again up my own ass. I'm like, this to me is fascinating.
I haven't watched it yet,
is
but I
just as
will.
much-
No,
No. I'm not talking about it
I'm going to, you motherfucker.
because you're going to
watch
be
your
like,
comedy.
dude, you need to be better at comedy.
Before we do this tour,
Like-
you got some work to do, bud. I'll send you a
Goddamn, like,
list
what?
of motivational
Yeah.
check marks.
Additional
that you
things
can-
to think of. besides that, I'm also just gonna send you a book of like how to be a better performer because
I'm just gonna send you David Lynch's book. Is what I'm gonna do.
Well, probably. I mean, I would listen to that book on tape.
It's great. He reads it. I've had the audiobook for a while. I listened to it 3 times in a row the day that he died because I didn't know what else to do over the course of it because it's short. Over the course of the day, I listened to the thing like 3 times.
Because of him passing and seeing people appreciate him, which people were appreciating him before he passed, but more clips on TikTok and screen grabs and blah blah blah, and people talking heads, everybody their opinion. Patricia Arquette working Lost Highway, all of it. And I was just like, yeah, man, like what a creator that was. I feel like always genuinely doing what he wanted.
Yeah.
Maybe not turning out the way necessarily, but like really love it. Love listening to him talk about the craft. So then after that show on that Saturday, and after I was scrubbing through, I was like, well, I'm gonna post this and I'm gonna put it together like this because this feels like what people should do and be inspired by. What he did is he is good, I think, as like showing the weirdness, showing the ugliness of some things, but through like a pop sensibility. Did you watch anything of his, or did you just listen to the book after he passed?
I'm going to see Eraserhead. Steel Stacks had a screening on the books already, and it was one of the things. It's like I kept meaning to ask them if I could get a free ticket, like a little freeloader, and I kept forgetting, and then found out from you that he died, and I was like, oh. So I texted my friend Anthony. I was like, "Can I get a ticket?" And again, I didn't know if I should say in the text, be like, "Hey, did you hear David Lynch died?" I was like, "Can I get an Eraserhead ticket before I forget again?" And they were already in a meeting. They're like, all right, what are we going to do? And I think what they decided is they're going to donate all the proceeds from the screening to the David Lynch Foundation. But I'm like, well, now it's going to,
that's awesome.
Now it's going to sell out. Like I think pre his death, it would have been a decent size, turnout for Eraserhead. But now as like, this is the local memorial for David Lynch, people will come. So I wanted to make sure I got a ticket before it filled up. But I have not, I that would be the one that I would rewatch. But knowing I'm going to go see it on the big screen in 2 weeks, now a couple days, I decided, I was like, well, we'll just sit it out. I'll catch it then. I started trying to rewatch Twin Peaks and I just couldn't yet. I've listened to the book a couple times since then. That's been it. I've been watching a bunch of interviews. He did. I've seen clips of it, but
Yes.
There's a documentary about him, David Lynch, The Art Life, I think it's called, that Criterion has put up for free on their site. So if anybody wants to watch it, you don't need to have a Criterion account. You can just go to their website and watch it. It is it's a lot of the same stuff from Catching the Big Fish, and a lot of stuff. One thing I did notice watching all these David Lynch interviews the past week is he says a lot of the same stuff a lot of the time, and it is a thing I've noticed with comedians and me, like doing a bunch of interviews where it's like, yeah, if you're getting asked the same questions, you're going to have versions of the same answer. And it was always a thing I was kind of self-conscious about. And then I started hearing other comics do it, or like writers that I admire, where it's like, oh, you're doing that story again. Okay. Kevin Smith was on.
Oh, that's exactly. I was getting to say
One.
Kevin. Kevin Smith. Yeah.
So the Good One podcast, which when it started was a podcast where they would bring a comedian on to talk about the evolution of one joke over time. Great premise. They've kind of gotten away from it because Jesse David Fox took some time off to work on the comedy book, which is another great read. But a lot of the times now it is just like he will do an interview with a comedy person about, a thing. It is less around the specific premise of we're gonna really dive into one joke. So he at an interview at Vulture Festival in fall, it was
Well, his first episode with Kevin Smith was they broke down. It was the release of Clerks 3.
Yeah.
He broke down the 3 Star Wars jokes from each one of the Clerks movies for the first episode they had. Which I went back and listened to that after this Vulture Fest one, and there was some things in that episode from 2022 that I hadn't heard Kevin Smith talk about sound clips a million fucking times, either in written form or audio form. So I like that more than I did what you're getting ready to say for this current.
Right. Well, he was talking
episode.
about, because now he has the rights to Dogma back. He's going to be doing like road shows with it this year, which is tremendous. But every story that he told in that episode, it's like, oh yeah, I know this one. He talks about meeting his wife, and he thinks Chris Rock sent him a sex worker, and it's like, yeah, I know. And look, again, I'm not knocking the guy. I'm saying what I've realized is like, yeah, you have. If you get asked the same stuff, you're going to tell the same stories. And I used to get really kind of in my head about it, but now where it's like, and again, Kevin Smith was one of the first people I realized did it, where it's like, all right, we're doing this one again. And I was like, maybe it's just him. And that dude influenced me so much in how I talk to an audience, I think. More so than like, we talked about how Steve Martin was my favorite comedian. I don't think I talk like Steve Martin on stage. I think I talk like Kevin Smith a little bit on stage. If you play a clip of me very excitedly addressing a large group of people and him, I was like, I think there's more in common than, Hedberg or other comedians that I enjoy.
2004 Kevin Smith. Like an evening with Kevin Smith. You're more verbose than he was then, but you do not have similarity between his, I think, current day bombastic.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the evening with Kevin Smith DVD era is more what.
Yeah, that's Glenn Tickles speed, yeah. But I grew up watching. So I was born in '85, and then in '86, the Monkey had a 20th anniversary, and they blew up on MTV with the reruns and stuff. Had a new single, had a new album, Nickelodeon, and everything. So my dad was a big OG Monkeys fan back in the day, and then taped all those episodes when I was 1, and so I grew up watching that and listening to them. There's a story about how my parents had a van, and the only way to keep me from crying was on road trips, popping a tape of the Monkeys on the VCR in the van. One time driving through the hills of Tennessee, they hit a bump and the VCR went off, and I started losing my mind, and they couldn't pull off anywhere. My mom had to crawl in the back and get the tape going again to keep from having a screaming baby. Anyway, watching the Monkeys, this huge band from the 60s, and not really in the 70s, but then resurgence again in the 80s. I grew up watching an entity be asked the same question over and over again on talk shows or in publications. And I was just like, oh, canned response. Or if like there were times where they'd be interviewed and they would act like they were improvising, joking with each other, it would be this thing I had seen them do 5 other times 20 years earlier, 20 years later, and then they toured again in the 90s and in the 2000s. So that for me, I was just like, oh, it's like those talk show answers.
Well, the one I really catch myself doing a lot is, and I'm sure you get asked the same thing. People are like, how'd you get started in stand-up comedy? And I can't change the answer because there's an answer. There's a real series of events that happened that led to me deciding to do stand up, and I've answered it a lot of times, and I end up catching myself as like it's like I'm just doing a bit. I'm just saying it the exact same way, but it's like, well, I'm not gonna lie and be like, well, I was, I got in a bar fight one night and then decided to turn my life. I was like, no, it's because I tried to be Kevin Smith.
I killed a man.
Yeah, it's because Clerks made me want to go to film school. I went to film school. The movie I made was, I mean, not unsuccessful. I sold it to Netflix. It made its money back, but I didn't get the opportunity to do another one. So I needed outlet. And then it's like, well, yeah, I mean, comedians are getting hired for writing jobs that I want to get. I understand how jokes work. I will go do that until I get a writing job. But when I started doing it, I like it a lot. I would rather do this. And it's like, yeah, there's only so many variations on that story that I can tell. But if you're going to ask me the same thing that I've been asked 40,000 times, you're going to get the same answer.
And I've tried to it's similar. I'm not going to go through mine, but I've tried to find the shortest way to tell it, or like as I've been criticized by my wife or friends of having too many details, that I'm just like, well, but the details are what make what
I have to paint a magical word picture
for the reasons. Yeah, and so, but yes, I very, very much have tried to make a shorter answer whenever, if it's like doing a podcast about film or any of the movies we've done, or for comedy. It's a very similar answer for both those questions. And I really tried
Mike's
to
in the
make
chat.
Concise. Oh,
yeah. Mike's in the chat and says that he's saying it's a bad interview if they don't do their homework. And I was like, well, sometimes it can be annoying if I'm getting if someone in an interview asks me if Tickle is my real last name, I do genuinely get annoyed, because it's like, oh, so you've not watched a moment of my work because I talk about it on Dry Bar. I talk about my first album. I do jokes about my name, I think, in Good Grief.
As narcissistic as we sound right now about being interviewed and all these things, there have been a couple times, semi more recently, that I have gone on someone's show or been interviewed, and they'll be like, so you did this, and this, and you came from blah, blah, blah. As narcissistic as you and I sound right now, whenever that happens, I am blown away of just like, okay, you looked up stuff. I'm like, oh, this feels way more important, and okay, it's rarefied.
I don't expect them to know
as douchey as we sound right now.
Yeah, I don't expect them to go in knowing every single thing about me, but knowing that my name is my name is like baseline.
Yes,
the easiest thing to find out about me before the interview. But if they don't, I don't expect them to listen to every piece of work I put out or listen to every other interview. But the homie Joel Byers, a regular thing that happens on Hot Breath is the person he is interviewing is genuinely blown away by the amount of research that he's done. There's a music journalist, Nardwar, who is famous for doing an insane amount of research on people. He will show up with an incredibly thoughtful gift for someone, and they'll be like, how did you know?
How do you know that?
How much this would mean to me? And he's like, don't worry about it. But it would be like, I'm trying to think of an example of one.
That kind of shit makes you question your loved ones. When a quote unquote stranger can research you and touch your soul by getting you a gift, that makes me go am I with the right person right now? Because this stranger was able to see me in a way that even my closest loved ones cannot.
I've been talking a lot about Mr. T lately, as I do the A-Team rewatch. And I've one of the jokes about it. It is genuinely, it's like 15 to 20 minutes probably total of me talking about Mr. T on stage lately. One of the jokes is about how I say in the joke version is like, I knew the moment that I was going to marry my wife. I don't know if that's 100% true, but it certainly led to the decision. When she gave me Mr. T's autobiography, I was like, this is so incredibly thoughtful of not just like, oh yeah, I don't know, I'll get him some A-Team bullshit. She's like, he loves the A-Team. He loves specifically Mr. T. I will get him this very, like, it was so thoughtful. That's like, God, this is like a nice lady. I think I want to keep her around.
Well, my brother did something like that. He backed into it a little bit, but it ended up being something that I really appreciated. He took me to a high-priced fancy dinner in downtown Cincinnati where they had, the guest of honor was Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of listening to Aaron Sorkin talk. The worlds he has spun with his vocabulary. So going to see him talk at this dinner thing was amazing, and it was great because it was all like tuxedoed wearing people. But then afterwards, so no one cared about his celebrity because they were there just to spend the whatever $500 a plate
Sure.
dinner thing for whatever charity, and him talking interesting, fine, whatever, but
they don't care.
To rich people, a celebrity, yeah, they don't care. So afterwards, Aaron Sorkin's just like chilling by himself, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go over and like just say hi and thank you and see if I can get a picture. And I said that to my brother. I was like, do you think I should? Is that weird? He's like, if that's what you want to do, go do it.
Yeah. Go give
and
Aaron
so I
a
did,
little
and
kiss.
Aaron Sorkin was, but Aaron Sorkin was just like, oh, like caught off guard, like, oh, people don't usually talk to me at these things or whatever, because he was probably paid what, $1 million to just fly
something
in
insane.
And, yeah, something
an
goofy.
amount of money we will never see.
And so, like, probably not necessarily how he wanted to spend a half an hour, but we ended up chatting a half an hour of basically me just doing the Chris Farley show of being like, remember that one time on Studio 60 in the Sunset Strip? That was awesome.
He is a guy
But,
I have mixed feelings about, where
yes,
he's
I
capable
do
of doing
too.
great
And
work,
it's based
but
on his
then
work
it
too.
feels like sometimes he just chooses to not. Where it's like being the Ricardos, I mean, get fucked, man. Throw that whole thing in the trash. What are you doing? But yeah, it's like, I don't know. I like Studio 60, but a big criticism that show got at the time was everyone's like, well, that's not how TV works. And it's like, well, okay, but back to my whole point where I was talking about David Lynch last week of like, it's about vibes, man. Like the vibes on Sorkin stuff, immaculate. He's so good at like tone and mood where you a lot of the times can kind of forgive the fact that he is just straight up lying to you about orders of events in a real world situation.
That his own self-directing thing. I think we talked about this, you and I personally, but not in the cast. I like the Trial of the Chicago
Haven't seen it.
7. But again, he directed it, and the stuff that he directs, like Being the Ricardos, Molly's Game. Oh, oof. But Kevin Smith talked about in the 2022 Good One episode that people praised him for writing dialogue that they were just like, oh man, I love that he writes such realistic dialogue. And Kevin Smith is like, he's like, I don't think this is realistic. He's like, if you have friends that talk like this, he's like, I want to hang out with you.
Yeah.
He's like, my friends are like, hey, get laid? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
He's like, that's how, he's like, I didn't think I was writing realistic dialogue. But Aaron Sorkin, people are just like, oh my gosh, his dialogue's amazing. Like, I love Smith's dialogue. I love Sorkin's dialogue. And I'm not saying top to bottom Smith or Sorkin,
Right.
but they have, on more than one occasion, have displayed this artistry that is just so poetic and like music for me to listen to. And I, before we pop out of here, bring up something that you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast about Vito.
Yeah.
Okay. Bring it back into comedy and not necessarily the people that influenced us to why we are who we are and why we're doing what we're doing and what we strive to be. Vito, you said, asked you a bunch of questions, right?
Sure. He sure did.
Okay, and he's producing shows, and he's young at comedy, so it
I mean,
sounds
he's young
like
at life. He's like 22. He's a wee
Right, but
little
so-
baby man.
what is an interesting path on the road of comedy. It sounds like Vito might be, he's asking all these questions and he's producing shows because that's the path he's going to choose to do. He's going to play maybe the political game of running shows to then also get booked on shows. And what do you think? Because I know some people in our scene here who have done that, and that is one path. Obviously, you and I don't like reaching out to places, or
I
it's
sure
not
don't.
our favorite thing. What do you think of that as being a young comedian's path?
I think it's great. I don't like doing it. It is one of the things where it's like I never got good at hosting because I didn't want to do it. So I was like, well, if I get good at it, people are going to want me to host. So I just won't focus on that part of it. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to produce shows. So if I produce shows, I'll have to produce shows.
You'll have to regularly be putting people on them and be reaching out and contacting.
Yeah, I don't like. I love it. Once in a while, putting a lineup together, recommending people for stuff. Happy to do it, but I don't want to. I was doing it for a while, and then the venue kind of fell apart. But I was doing a monthly show, and like pretty quickly, I was like, this is already exhausting. I did 3 of them, and it's like, this is already tiring. And it was just like, yeah, I got to keep worrying about a lineup and, Dave the show. I was like, is everybody going to get here on time? Like, it's all the parts that I don't like, and I should do more of it because then I would do more shows. So it is one of those things where it's like, yeah, I should just suck it up, find another venue, do, 1 or 2 monthly shows around. But I think it is great to be able to lean into the parts of comedy or whatever, your profession is. To find the parts of it that you like doing and can get really good at, because I guarantee you that there's people who don't like doing that part of it either. I'm sure you've done it too. I've done corporate gigs where I'm not doing any stand-up comedy. All I'm doing is being the one to talk into a microphone because no one at the office wanted to be the one to talk into the microphone. They're like, we just need you to MC, man. You're just going to read names for the accounting awards. And it's like, deal. Can't wait. It's going to be great.
But what I'm saying, so I guess in more of my experience is the people who, when they're early on, start being showrunners and room runners, and they're comedians themselves, which more often or not that is the case.
Sure.
End up becoming gatekeepers.
I mean, they can.
And they end up
I don't
being
know.
those comedians who are trading for, like, okay, I'm gonna book this person and have this clout and this, and this, and now you will book me because we have something to offer one another.
Maybe. I don't know. It might. That's true of anybody gets any authority and in any area, they will figure out a way to lord it over people.
That is my least favorite thing about comedy.
Well, that's so we're working with a booker for the Daddio Tour because you and I don't like reaching out to places. So now that we have someone who does. Like my college agents that I've worked with, a big reason that I've started working with them rather than just trying to do it solo is it is a lot of like following up with people and like remembering to email somebody back in 2 days. And it's like, I will forget. I will, if I will send one email, and if I don't hear back, to me, that is a no, right? I never have the impulse, but like, well, it's been like a week, so I should probably follow up and like make sure they got it. They're probably busy. It is, if I don't hear back, I assume that they hate me. is just what it is. So if I have someone who their whole deal is, look, the only way I'm getting a percentage of this is if I, bug this theater in Ohio until they book Ricky and Glenn, I'm going to keep on them. And great. That's what I need. But, it's not for everybody, but there's also people who, we hear it all the time. It's like, oh, God, I would never want to stand up in front of all those people and talk. It's like, I need to. I am so desperate for attention.
I will die if I do not get up in front of you and express the chuckle thoughts. Oh, from blue to red to red to blue.
I wasn't going to address it because most of the people who experience this are just on audio, but I've been switching glasses for the past couple of minutes. These are new ones that I got yesterday, and I'm not convinced that they did them right. I don't think the prisms are correct. The prescription is things look clear, but I was having double vision pretty bad. So I switched and put my old ones on, and it looked
blue.
Good. So I switched back to make sure, and I don't think.
Put the red and the blue ones on at the same time, but it look like it's in 3D.
Well, that's how I know that the prisms are there. Is things that aren't not in 3D look 3D.
Very interesting.
Because of, not to get too, I've not verified this, but if you're like, well, why does that happen, Glenn? Well, because it's like the why the sky is blue joke that I have, because of light refraction, right? So as light goes through the prisms, the different colors go slightly different angles. So when they hit my eyes, they appear at slightly different depths.
Science. You just got science.
Just got scienced. But that wasn't happening with these because now, so the Daddio Tour thing in the other blocks on the screen, since it's red on red, that is fine. But if it was like red on blue, it would look 3D to me. But I had another window open and I noticed that normally it would, so I switched and things look flat in these. I don't know. I got them. I needed a backup pair because my eyes are so bad that like if I'm in Minnesota next week and my glasses break, I just have to live in Minnesota for a while until I get new ones.
Can't get out of Minnesota.
Yeah.
So now and also you had to have your Buckaroo Manzai red glasses.
Yeah, well that's why I got red ones.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I got them from the place that I did because I've been trying to find another pair of that frame. But like my wife broke her glasses the other day, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'll order another pair. It'll be here in probably like a week." And I'm like, "Why? I wouldn't be able to function. I wouldn't."
Yeah.
I wouldn't, because she doesn't need to wear them all the time. She like wears them when she's reading or whatever. But it's like, oh yeah, no, I can't drive a car without my glasses. I can barely, get across the house in the middle of the night if I don't put them on.
You're Mr. Magoo.
I straight up Mr. Magoo without these things anymore. Well, especially since getting used to the prisms, because the double vision thing was like whether I was wearing glasses or not before these, double vision. And now they're designed to fix that double vision. So when I take them off, the double vision way worse.
Fascinating
tale
episode
about eyeballs and light refraction.
I know it's the end of the episode because I have to piss like a racehorse.
Yeah.
We gotta shut it down. This releases on Friday, the 24th.
Yeah.
Is that what Friday is? I will be welcoming a nephew, my older brother Eric,
Oh yeah.
His baby is coming Friday, so the next time that we record, I will have a new baby in my life because having twin 1-year-old babies is not enough.
Congrats.
I mean, it's not my baby, but
to your brother.
To my brother. Yeah. All right, sir. I will talk to you later.
Stay loose, kids.
It's the Daddio Show.